to sin. And just like the devil's doormat, my soul's wearing thin. Oh, so I can't go back again. Dreaming dreams, I've been playing games that I know I just can't win. I've been down this road before, I know what's in store, I know how it ends. With broken dreams and broken bones, because the bottle was my best friend. Sometimes I hear that whistle blowing, I can't tell a dream or if it's true. And I can also hear the faint sound of that old Hank Williams tune. And I never call myself a rambling man, 'cause I can't ever seem to leave this old town. But there's a place out there up high somewhere that only the devil fears. Oh, but you can't get there from here. So I stand here living proof life can be summed up with nothing more than 3 chords and the truth. Oh, guess I can give it one more shot and pour it all into that glass, 'cause right now it's all I got. So now I'm feeling high, no, not that kind, no, I ain't quite stoned. I turn around and I set it behind me, and I look up high, Lord, I'm coming home. Sometimes I hear that whistle blowing, I can't tell a dream or if it's true. And I can also hear the faint sound of that old Hank Williams tune. And I never call myself.
I'm Johnny Ashley in the Hood in the Woods. You can find me on Facebook as The Real Hood in the Woods, and you can find me on Instagram as Abandoned in Appalachia. For more mountain music, check out Clovis Draper's YouTube channel. If you'd like to financially help support this channel, you know, throw me a couple bucks for gas. I'm going to have a link for my PayPal in the description. And also, if you'd like to get you an official Hood in the Woods book, I'm going to have a link for that in the description as well. We're in Wythe County, Virginia, and we're at Locust Hill Manor. Adam Dean first got this land. It was deeded to him in 1774. His son James Dean deeded 1,347 acres to James McGavick. When McGavick died in 1812, his lands were split between his daughters, Peggy and Betsy. Betsy was married to Gordon Cloyd. She deeded Peggy her share of the farm, as well as giving her 1,000 acres of Cloyd's land. Joseph Kent was born in Montgomery County, Virginia in 1765. He married Peggy McGavick, and they had a daughter named Ann Nancy Kent. With his wife's inheritance, Joseph Kent owned some of the finest farmland in Wythe County. He lived on an estate called Kentland. He died in 1843. Alfred Cleon Moore was born in Patrick County, Virginia in 1805. At 14, he was orphaned, and he moved one county away to Surry County, North Carolina. He studied law. He attended Madison Academy and the University of North Carolina at Chapel Hill. In 1829, he received his law license. Starting at the age of 23, he served 3 years in the state legislature, from 1828 to 1830. Alfred Moore married Ann Kent in 1830. That was his last year in the legislature, and she was pregnant with his child, so he moved to Wythe County, Virginia. On his wife's share of the land, Alfred Moore built his dream home. He named it Locust Hill Manor, and it was built in 1850. The bricks that this house is made of are made out of the clay that was dug out of the ground here. 2 years after the house was completed, in 1852, Ann Kent died. She left behind 8 children. Ann's unmarried sister Eliza lived here too and helped with the children. This is Alfred Moore's grave. Now I would be filming it from the side it's written on, but the sun's not cooperating with me. Now I got the sun right in my face, but we're going to try to get right here and see it. So he's marked as a general on his tombstone, but it's General Moore, and it shows his colonel in the 29th Regiment of Virginia Volunteers, Confederate States of America, and he was born in Patrick County, December 12, 1806, and he died March 16, 1890. Mr. Moore was very active in the local militia. In 1839 he became a colonel, and in 1851 he became a brigadier general. Being the fact that he was a plantation owner, in 1861 when the Civil War kicked off, it ain't too hard to figure out which side he fought on. All 4 of Colonel Moore's sons served in the Southern Army. Mr. Moore played a large role in recruiting local men for the war effort. He also spent the summer training them. In 1861, Southern President Jefferson Davis came to Wythe. He made Humphrey Marshall a brigadier general, and Mr. Moore here a colonel in the Confederate Army. General Marshall was put in charge of Southwest Virginia and Kentucky. Colonel Moore over here, he stayed in Wythe County. In 1862, Colonel Moore and his 1,000 troops were deployed to the Battle of Middle Creek. The Battle of Middle Creek was fought on January 10, 1862. It was located near Prestonburg in eastern Kentucky. Kentucky began the war as a neutral state, but after the South invaded them, they asked the North to protect them. An estimated 125,000 Kentuckians served in the Northern Army and 35,000 served in the Southern Army. Sadly, the Battle of Middle Creek showed the true divisive nature of the war. It was the definition of brother versus brother. 2 divisions of Northern Kentucky soldiers launched an attack against 1 division of Southern Kentucky soldiers. Greatly outnumbered, General Marshall called up Colonel Moore for backup. When the smoke cleared, the Southern Army was making a retreat, and the Northern Army was celebrating a much-needed victory. Despite the poor leadership, the lack of supplies, and being outnumbered, Colonel Moore's 29th Virginia Regiment held their position during the battle. He reported that 5 of his troops were killed and 12 wounded. This defeat cost General Marshall his reputation, and his days of leadership in the Southern Army were numbered. The Northern Colonel, on the other hand, was an unknown college professor from Ohio, and this victory was the foundation that his reputation was built on. That colonel's name was James Garfield, but today we would call him the 20th President of the United States. 6.5 months after taking office, an assassin would introduce him to a bullet. He would be the 2nd U.S. President to be murdered while in office. After the battle, Colonel Moore and his troops returned to Southwest Virginia. A few months later, though, they were called back up to duty and transferred to Richmond. They were to serve under Robert E. Lee in his Army of Northern Virginia. Colonel Moore was highly regarded by his troops. In 1862, they wrote a letter to Southern President Jefferson Davis requesting that he be promoted to Brigadier General. In 1863, he resigned his position with the Southern Army. He was needed at home. 2 of his sons had died during the war, and his wife's sister Elza had also died. After returning to Wythe County, his former troops got their request. He was made a brigadier general of the local militia. He's believed to have been involved in the Battle of Saltsville. Now there was 2 battles, and I'm not sure if he was involved in both of them or just one. The North came and attacked the salt mines here. Salt was a valuable resource before the days of refrigeration because it was used to preserve food. The town of Saltsville also sits on a branch line that connected it to the Tennessee-Virginia Railroad. In the first battle, 5,000 Northern troops showed up to destroy the salt works. Now the salt works were defended by 2,000 members of Southern militia and Home Guard. At the end of that first battle, the North lost 290 soldiers, while the South lost 165. The first battle of Saltsville is actually called the Massacre of Saltsville. After the battle was won and wounded Northern troops lay scattered around the field, Southern militia began working their way around the battlefield, killing all the wounded Northern troops. The 5th Colored Cavalry was one of the divisions that was in the battle for the North. The Southern militia took particular interest in picking off any black Northern soldier they could find and any of their white commanding officers. A makeshift field hospital was made nearby at Emory and Henry University. After the killing on the battlefield was completed, him and his men roamed the halls of the hospital. They killed every black soldier they found, and all the white commanding officers of the 5th Colored Cavalry. It's hard to tell who was killed in the battle and who was killed in the massacre, but the numbers range anywhere between 50 and 150 troops. When news of this reached Robert E. Lee, he demanded that those responsible be brought to justice. After the investigation was completed, Champ Ferguson and his militia was blamed for the massacre. There's no way of telling how many soldiers he had killed that were left on the battlefield, but we know he killed all of the soldiers in the hospital. It's in dispute whether his militia was the only one involved, but after hearing about Champ Ferguson, he definitely sounds like a likely suspect. Calling him and his men militia is a disservice to the word militia. Warlord or criminal gang is probably a much more accurate description. Even before the war, he had killed 2 men in a posse that were chasing him for the murder of a 3rd man. The Civil War was just an excuse for him to kill more, and it provided him a shield from prosecution. He robbed, pillaged, and waged a guerrilla war against his neighbor. He used the guise of the Civil War to settle any personal feud. This wasn't the first massacre he was accused of committing. He was known for beheading POWs and rolling their heads down hills, and for walking around the battlefield after the battle was over, killing all the wounded troops. Champ Ferguson had already been arrested for murder by the Southern Army, and he was held in Wytheville, Virginia, but the charges were dropped for lack of evidence. As soon as the regular Southern soldiers showed up, Champ Ferguson and his crew, they hit the road. They knew that their actions were not going to be appreciated. As soon as the South surrendered, ending the war, the Northern Army went and arrested Champ Ferguson. His trial wasn't specifically for the massacre that happened here, but for war crimes in general. Being a guerrilla, he was an unpaid soldier with no oversight, and that in itself was illegal. The chief witness against him was his arch rival, a Northern guerrilla. David Tinker Beatty and Champ Ferguson had a lot in common. The only thing they didn't have in common was which side they fought on. Beatty led an equally vicious pack of Northern guerrillas. The political aspect of this trial caused an uproar, because Beatty was admitting to the same crimes that Ferguson was being prosecuted for. During the trial, Ferguson admitted that he had killed over 100 men during the war. On October 10, 1865, Ferguson was found guilty and sentenced to death. A knotted piece of rope in a tree was all that was needed to send Ferguson to the place that he had sent so many others. He was one of the 2 people that was tried and hung for war crimes committed during the Civil War. The other person was Captain Henry Wirtz. He was the commandant of the infamous POW camp in Andersonville, Georgia. All right, back to the Battle of Saltsville. The first battle was in October, and the North was led by Brigadier General Burbank. Losing to a force half the size of your force isn't a good sign of military leadership, and he was replaced. In late December, his replacement, General Stoneman, decided he would try his luck here. He was more successful. His force of 7,000 men ran right over the 1,000 Southern militia that was guarding the salt works. They destroyed the mines and the railroad. General Moore is also believed to have played a role in the defense of Wytheville. Now, the town of Wytheville is the county seat of Wythe County. Wytheville was invaded 3 times during the Civil War. The last 2 times were uneventful, with the North taking the town and burning it to the ground. The first battle was called the Raid of Wytheville, and local militia and townsfolk were greatly outnumbered by the Northern forces, but yet they were able to hold them off. We're on US 52. Now, all these state routes, they were built where old roads used to be, and it'd be like the main road in the county would become the state route, and then they'd link them all together. So I'm willing to bet there was a road here, and this road goes from Wytheville to Virginia up to Bluefield, West Virginia. All right. As the Union Army, they came down this road, a girl in Bland County saw them, which is the county in between West Virginia and Wythe County. She hopped on a horse and she rode down to Wytheville and told the Confederate Army about the Union coming to attack them. The Confederate Army had plenty of advance notice before they got here. On June 13th, 1863, Union Colonel John Tollard led 872 officers and men of the 34th Regiment Mounted Ohio Infantry from Camp Piatt, West Virginia into southwest Virginia to attack the railroads, telegraph, and salt and lead mines essential for the Confederate cause. At Tug Ridge in Abbs Valley, which that's going to be by Pocahontas, if you ever watched the Pocahontas video, on July 17th, Tollard surprised and captured a small company of Confederate pickets commanded by Captain J.E. Stallings of the 45th Virginia Infantry. As Tollard's raiders descended to the foot of the Walker Mountain, Confederate Major Andrew J. May followed close behind with about 250 cavalry. May had been pursuing and harassing Tollard's rear guard for more than 100 miles. General John S. Williams, hoping to block the Federals' avenue for escape, had ordered May to advance and check them at advantage positions. So what that meant was when they walked through a valley, he got the high ground and took some easy shots. A sudden blow during a brief engagement, he freed all of the 35 soldiers taken by Toland at Abbs Valley. He also killed 8 of Talda's men and captured 20, as well as a number of citizens and Negroes. May's attack reduced the strength of the 34th Regiment Mounted Ohio Volunteer Infantry to 802 men. The Confederate losses were unknown. Despite May's assault, however, Toland pressed on towards Wytheville and the Virginia and Tennessee Railroad. The Northern troops marched down Tazewell Street into the heart of Wytheville. Little did they know that they had local militia and armed civilians surrounding them. Snipers lay on top of rooftops, and riflemen peered out of windows, waiting for the opportune time to start firing. At this house in front of us was when they shot the second volley of fire. Northern Captain Toland was struck and killed. He was the commanding officer, and without him, the troops were lost. They tried to continue their mission, but they were quickly beat back out of town under heavy fire. Numbers differ on how many men were killed in the battle. The North claims that they killed 75 Southern fighters. The South claims that only 2 were killed. Also, the number of the dead North is also disputed. Anywhere between 7 and 14 men were killed in the battle. The officers were buried in a Catholic cemetery in Wytheville, and all the privates were buried here at St. John's Lutheran Cemetery. After the war ended, he faced a new battle. In the 1850 census, he was listed as having 15 slaves, and in the 1860 census, his wife's sister Elza was listed as having 35 slaves. The antebellum South is known for 2 things: its riches and its extravagance, and man's cruelty towards another man to get those things. The day after the Civil War ended, a whole lot of people's lives changed. Another problem that he faced was he never technically owned this farm. His wife Anne and her sister Elza, they inherited all this land from their father. After Elza's death in 1866, all the land had been officially deeded to the 6 surviving children. To hustle up some much needed cash, one son sold his share of the land to a mineral company in Philadelphia. That company was headed by Harvey Groom. Whether that deal included this house was disputed, and the issue was taken to court in 1886. The court agreed with Harvey Groom, and he was awarded ownership of this house. The Moores lived here for another 4 years, until 1890. That year, the house was sold to John Huddle. That same year, Colonel Moore died. The house stayed in the Huddle family until the 1980s, when it was sold again. That's my video. I hope you liked it. If you did like it, you need to hit the like button, and you need to hit the subscribe button. Don't be watching my stuff for free.